The cry cut through the silence like glass snapping in the dark. Maya froze. Her fingers, still damp from cleaning the silver sink in the guest kitchen, twitched with the echo. The sound came again, sharper this time. A baby's cry, high-pitched, hollow with panic. It wasn't just fussing. It was fear. She dried her hands quickly on the edge of her apron, then stepped into the hallway. The Ellington estate was a cathedral of silence after sundown. The marble beneath her bare feet was cold, the sconces dimmed to a hush. Only that cry, coming from the nursery upstairs, broke the stillness. Mrs. Ellington was gone, left that morning on a sudden trip to her sister's cabin in Aspen. The nanny had requested a mental health day and hadn't returned since. Maya, a housemaid, wasn't even on the overnight rotation. But something inside her stirred. A tug, deep and unshakable. The wail shattered again. She climbed the stairs 2 at a time. Inside the nursery, the baby boy, barely 4 months old, lay squirming in his crib. His tiny face was beet red, his fists curled tight. Bottles sat untouched on the nearby table. Cold. She picked one up, pressed it gently to his lips. He turned his head away, sobbing harder. Maya rocked him, whispered softly, tried the pacifier. Nothing worked. Minutes stretched. The cries didn't slow. Her heartbeat pounded with his. Her blouse dampened with sweat. She glanced toward the door, no one. Then she sat. Not in the rocking chair. On the rug near the crib. She cradled him in her arms and, after a long, trembling moment, unbuttoned her blouse. Maya hadn't breastfed in years. Her own daughter, Layla, had passed at 8 months. Pneumonia, poor clinic, bad timing. Her milk had dried with her grief. But sometimes the body remembers what the heart never forgets. The baby latched almost instantly, and just like that, the room changed. His cries quieted. His tiny body softened against her chest. Maya rocked back and forth, gently humming a lullaby her grandmother used to sing on sticky Louisiana nights, back when black women nursed white babies in silence, without pay, without pride, because it was expected, because it was the only way. But tonight wasn't about duty or desperation. It was instinct. Still, shame flickered inside her. What would they say? What would they do if they saw this? If he saw this? Maya looked down at the baby. His eyelids fluttered, heavy with calm. She hadn't seen a look that peaceful on anyone in that house. Not even his parents. Footsteps. She stiffened. Slow. Heavy. Coming from the hallway. Nearing the nursery. Her arms froze around the child. The doorknob turned. She didn't breathe. The door swung open, and standing there, tall in a navy silk robe, was Charles Ellington, the billionaire himself. His face still as stone. His eyes locked on hers, then drifted slowly, deliberately, to the child pressed against her chest. Silence. He said nothing, and Maya did not let go. Maya's breath caught mid-throat. Charles Ellington stood in the doorway like a verdict made flesh. The nursery's soft lamplight cast half his face in gold, the other in shadow. His robe hung loose at the collar, revealing the top of a white undershirt. Barefoot, silent, Maya didn't move. The baby suckled softly at her breast, unaware of the storm in the room. Her blouse was still open, her skin warm beneath the tiny weight curled against her. Her body screamed to cover herself, to flee, but her heart anchored her to the velvet armchair. Charles stepped inside. Slowly. His eyes never left hers. One step. Another. He said nothing as he approached, the thick rug muting his footsteps. Maya thought she saw something flicker in his expression, but it vanished before it took form. He stopped a few feet away, looked down. The baby's hand rested against Maya's collarbone. Relaxed. Federal safe. Why? The word, low and even, hung between them like smoke. Maya opened her mouth, but no sound came. Her pulse pounded behind her ears. No one had ever asked her that question without judgment already curled inside it. She swallowed. He was screaming, she said finally, voice thin. The bottles were cold. He wouldn't take them. He was desperate. Charles said nothing. She tightened her hold on the baby. I didn't plan to. She paused, correcting herself. I just did what I knew would help. Still, he watched her. Not the baby, not her chest, just her. He exhaled slowly, as if dragging something heavy up from his ribs. How long? Maya blinked. Just minutes. No, he interrupted softly. I meant, how long have you worked here? She hesitated. Almost 11 months. His gaze shifted then, around the nursery, toward the changing table, the plush mobile, the untouched bottles. The silence between them stretched so long that Maya felt like it might snap. Finally, he spoke again. You lost a child. Her heart jolted. How do you know that? I read your file. I read everyone's file, he said, almost to himself. Your daughter, Layla, a name Maya hadn't heard aloud in over 2 years. I'm sorry, he added, barely audible. Something cracked in Maya's chest. Not all the way, just enough to ache. I thought I could help him sleep, she said quietly. I didn't want him to suffer. Charles lowered his head for a moment, then nodded slowly. He walked to the side of the crib and reached down, brushing his fingers gently over the blanket. His movements were cautious, unfamiliar. You know, he murmured, I haven't held him in days. Not really. I don't know how. Maya looked up. He turned toward her, but not with accusation. Something else. Hesitation, maybe, or the beginnings of shame. He won't remember this, Maya said, voice steadier now. But his body will. The feeling of being held. The warmth. He'll carry that, even if he doesn't know why. Silence again. Then Charles straightened and took one step back. You can finish, he said. Then put him down. You should get some rest. Maya nodded, unsure of what any of this meant. She expected him to leave, but instead he stood still, watching, not her, the child, as if trying to memorize something too fragile to last. After a moment, he turned and walked out the door, closing it gently behind him. Maya sat frozen for a long time. She wasn't fired. Not yet. Not punished. But neither was she safe. And the sound of that one word, why, still echoed in her bones. She buttoned her blouse with one hand, cradling the baby with the other. His breathing was slow now, heavy with sleep. As she placed him gently into the crib, her fingers lingered for a second longer than necessary. Downstairs, footsteps resumed, distant voices, and somewhere in the hall, a whisper passed. One that would spread before morning. Did you hear what the maid did last night? By morning, the house had changed. Not visibly. The chandeliers still sparkled. The mahogany floors gleamed. The linens were folded with surgical precision. But beneath the polish, something sour lingered, like spoiled milk in a crystal decanter. Maya could feel it before she saw it. Whispers. Eyes that slid away when she entered a room. Conversations that fell dead silent in her presence. Dishes that were once casually handed to her now placed at the far edge of the counter, as if her touch might stain them. News had traveled. Fast. By noon, the entire Ellington staff had heard. The maid nursed the baby. No one said it outright, but it pulsed through the walls, a hum just under the surface. First, Maya held her head high. She scrubbed the dining room chairs with measured grace. She polished the windows without pausing, even when 2 junior maids paused behind her, murmuring with cupped hands. But then came Eliza, head housekeeper, 49, white, loyal to the Ellingtons for over 20 years. Her uniform always perfectly pressed. Her heels always just loud enough. Maya, she called sweetly from across the laundry hall. You missed a spot on the glassware. Or is that breast milk fogging up the crystal? A pause. A smile. Sharp and sugar-coated. Maya didn't answer. Eliza moved closer. Just teasing, darling. You're such a natural, after all. Later that day, Maya's cleaning supplies went missing. Her locker mysteriously jammed. The lunch she'd packed, a small Tupperware of rice and lentils, was found spilled across the break room floor, like a message written in grains. And through it all, Charles Ellington said nothing. He passed her in the corridor once, eyes scanning his phone. didn't speak, didn't nod. His silence was a wall, clean, clinical, unshakable. Maya didn't expect praise, but something inside her began to rot from the weight of his indifference. That night, she showered longer than usual. The hot water burned, but she didn't move away. She scrubbed her skin harder than necessary, her chest tender from both feeding and shame. She touched the place where the baby's head had rested and tried to feel proud. Instead, she felt like a story someone else had twisted. Her mind drifted to her grandmother, a woman who had cleaned houses in Georgia in the 1940s, who had nursed 3 white children not her own while her own son, Maya's father, cried himself to sleep at home hungry. She gave them milk, Maya remembered her mother saying once, and came home covered in blood. That's what it meant to be us. Maya understood it now. Milk and blood, nourishment and pain, giving and being taken from. The next day, Eliza handed Maya a stained sheet with a smirk. I'd suggest bleach, but I suppose you're more of a natural remedy type, she said. Maya took it in silence. Not because she was weak, because she was boiling. And somewhere, deep beneath the ache and the silence, something began to grow, a refusal, a quiet fire. That afternoon, while cleaning the edges of the nursery window, Maya noticed something strange. The floorboard beneath the rocking chair was uneven, slightly raised. She knelt down, tugged gently, creaked open. Inside, dust and paper. A letter, folded carefully, the edges browned with time. She opened it. One line stood out in faded ink. They'll shame you for what they've always demanded from us. Maya sat back on her heels, heart pounding. The voice on the paper was a stranger's, but the pain was her own. And maybe this wasn't new. Maybe this house had always had ghosts, voices that weren't allowed to speak until someone listened. She folded the letter, tucked it into her apron, and stood tall. Something had cracked. Not her. The silence. The letter stayed folded in Maya's apron pocket for the rest of the day. She didn't read it again. Not yet. Just touching it. Feeling the fragile paper. The crinkled weight of someone else's hidden truth was enough to keep her going. After dinner service, after the dishes and the clatter and the glares, after Eliza had made another sly comment about crossing boundaries, Maya finally returned to her small room in the servants' quarters, tucked behind the laundry hall next to the boiler. She locked the door, sat on the edge of the narrow bed, unfolded the letter. The ink had faded, the script old-fashioned, slanted cursive, the kind taught with rulers and shame. If you are reading this, I was not meant to be remembered, but I still wrote. My name is Alma. I cleaned this house in 1964, when the walls were painted new but the air still smelled like cotton and sweat. I held their children. I fed them. I bled for them. And they gave me nothing but silence. Maya's eyes stung. They said I was lucky to work in a house like this, that I should be grateful. But I was not lucky. I was invisible. I was a body. My milk fed a child who would grow to forget me, and my own boy died of fever while I worked unpaid overtime folding napkins for parties I couldn't attend. Maya pressed her fingers to the ink, as if touching the words could summon Alma herself. The lady of the house walked in on me once, feeding her son. She did not yell. She did not thank me. She just said, "That's enough." And I never held the child again. She paused reading. The words dug deep, familiar in ways she wished they weren't. Alma's pain was older than Maya's, but identical in shape. A mirror held across time. Don't let them rewrite you. That's what they do. They take the most human parts of us and make them scandal. Our tenderness becomes taboo. Our bodies become threats. But remember this. They'll shame you for what they've always demanded from us. And if you dare to stand tall, they'll call it rebellion. Maya exhaled. The air felt heavier than before. The letter ended simply, "If you found this, you are not alone." She folded it again, this time slowly, reverently, as if tucking away a piece of a buried ancestor. For the first time in days, Maya didn't feel crazy, or weak, or wrong. She felt part of something older, bigger, a lineage of women who had nursed white babies while their own grief grew in silence. Maya stood, walked to her small dresser, and tucked the letter into the back of her Bible. Not out of religion, but out of ritual. That space between pages of psalms and parables felt like the right place for Alma. The next morning, Maya rose early, dressed before sunrise. She made sure her uniform was pressed, her collar sharp, her shoes polished. She braided her hair back tightly. When she walked into the main hall, Eliza glanced up, ready to strike. But Maya looked straight through her. Not with defiance, with dignity. She moved through the house like she belonged, like Alma was walking with her. But even as she stepped into her role again, Maya knew things were shifting. That evening, as she prepared the dining room for a high-profile party, a new tension filled the walls. Not silence, but scrutiny. And at the center of it, Maya felt the eyes beginning to turn. From whispers to stares. From innuendo to spectacle. The chandelier above the dining room table glittered like a frozen crown. The kind of light that made everything below it seem smaller, more fragile. Maya moved between the guests with a silver tray balanced in one hand, her face a mask of practiced calm. 12 seats, white tablecloth, imported wine, French cutlery, powerful men and polished women. The air thick with perfume and politics. She could feel their eyes before she heard their words. First, it was just a glance, a whisper behind a manicured hand. Then came the half-laughed comments that weren't quite jokes. That the one? With the baby thing? Maya kept her head down, the tray steady. Charles Ellington sat at the head of the table, flanked by executives, attorneys, and the mayor's wife. He hadn't looked at Maya all evening. Not once. But his jaw was clenched, his wine untouched. She reached his side, pouring Cabernet into his glass, when the voice rang out. "Hey, Charlie," slurred one of the guests. Reynolds, a venture capitalist with a face red from drink. "Heard your maid's got magic milk. Should have let her wet nurse your whole board. Might have gotten better quarterly numbers." Laughter. Not loud but sharp. Quick. Time folded inward. Maya felt her spine go rigid, her hand frozen mid-pour. Across the table, the mayor's wife stiffened. Someone coughed into their napkin. Charles moved. Not much, just a twitch of the wrist. But the sound of glass shattering against the marble floor silenced everything. His wine stem lay in shards at his feet, dark red bleeding into the white tile like a wound. Reynolds looked up, startled. "Whoa! My bad, was that?" Charles didn't respond. His eyes remained forward, fixed, blank. Maya didn't wait for a command. She stepped back, excused herself softly, and walked out of the dining room as calmly as she could manage. Her hands trembled once she passed the threshold. She pushed through the kitchen doors. The clang of the swinging metal was the only thing that broke the quiet panic rising in her throat. She leaned against the counter, knuckles white against the granite. The shame wasn't new, but tonight it had teeth. "You all right?" The voice came low, gentle. Maya turned. Jacob stood in the back corner of the kitchen. The chauffeur, always quiet, always watching. He'd driven Charles for years, but never spoke unless spoken to. His eyes were kind, worn but kind. "I'm fine," she lied. Jacob stepped forward. He didn't ask again, just opened the palm of his hand. Inside, a wrapped chocolate from the front parlor. "I always take one," he said. "Every time, even if they never notice." Maya stared at it. A beat passed. Then she smiled. Small, barely there. She took it. It wasn't much, just sugar and foil. But it felt like something solid in a room built from glass. Back in the dining room, the laughter had resumed, though quieter now, more careful. The performance rolled on. But something had cracked. Not just Charles's glass. Something beneath it. Something inside him. And as Maya leaned back against the kitchen wall, fingers wrapped around that tiny square of chocolate, she knew the silence was almost ready to break. The house was quiet again. The kind of quiet that felt earned. Not peaceful, but exhausted. After the guests had gone, after the laughter faded and the broken glass was swept, Maya stayed late. Not out of duty, out of something else, something unsettled. She found Charles in the study. He sat alone in a leather armchair, a half-empty glass of bourbon in one hand, the other resting against his temple. The fire behind him cracked softly, shadows flickering across his face. Maya knocked lightly against the doorframe. He didn't look up. "You can come in." She stepped inside, slowly. "I have a question," she said. He nodded, eyes still fixed on the flames. "I figured. Why haven't you fired me?" That made him glance up. "I nursed your child. In your house. I've been humiliated, targeted, whispered about. You haven't defended me. You haven't condemned me. You haven't said anything at all." Charles set his glass down. "I saw what happened tonight," Maya continued. "I saw you break the glass. But breaking a glass isn't the same as breaking your silence." He studied her face. For a long time he said nothing. Then, "My wife, Evelyn," he said slowly. "She hated this house, hated what it represented. After the baby was born, she faded. Postpartum depression. The kind that slips between smiles. She wouldn't hold him, couldn't feed him. I didn't understand it back then. I thought it was a phase." He paused. "One night, I found her in the nursery, just standing over the crib, blank, lost. I asked her if she'd fed him. She said, 'He's better off hungry than touched by me.'" Maya felt the chill behind those words. "I hired the best specialists, the best nannies, but none of them could calm him." He looked directly at her now. "You did." Her jaw tightened. "That still doesn't answer my question." He leaned forward. "Because firing you would have been easier, quieter. I didn't. Not because I was brave, but because I couldn't decide what scared me more, public backlash, or facing what this house has always stood for." Maya folded her arms. "You've built an empire on silence. Power, wealth, influence. And not once did you think to use any of it to shield the people under your roof." "I know," he said. "That's what shames me." She took a breath. "I don't need your shame. I need your truth. If I'm going to be talked about, pointed at, slandered, I at least deserve to be seen." "You are seen." "No," Maya snapped. "I am watched. Watched like a problem. Watched like a mistake. But not seen. Not respected." Silence settled between them again. This time heavier. Not avoidance, reckoning. Then Charles stood. "You saved my son's life. Not just with milk. With presence. With love. Things this house has been starved of for years." His voice softened. "Tell me what you want." "I want dignity," Maya replied. "Not protection. Not pity. I want you to make this right. Not just for me. For every woman who's had her body used and her name erased." He nodded. "I can start," he said. "But you'll have to hold me to it." She met his gaze evenly. "I intend to." As Maya turned to leave, something shifted in the room. Not loud, but real. The next morning, the media would descend. Not because of a scandal. Because a photo taken without consent was about to leak. And the world would see what this house tried to hide. It happened on a Wednesday. The morning broke with camera flashes instead of sunrise. Maya awoke to Jacob banging on her door. He didn't speak when she opened it, just handed her his phone. Her breath caught. There it was. The photo. Grainy. Shot from the side. But unmistakable. Maya in the nursery. Blouse open. Charles's baby in her arms, nursing peacefully. The angle was invasive, the moment sacred. Stolen. She scrolled. Headlines screamed across her screen. Maid or mother? Billionaire's black servant sparks outrage. Ellington scandal. Too close for comfort. The milk and the money. By noon, the estate gates were surrounded. Cameras, reporters, protesters, supporters, haters, all blending into noise. Maya tried to stay inside, but the internet had already breached the walls. Her name, her photo, her home address, doxed. The comments flooded in like sewage. Disgusting. Why didn't she keep her hands off the baby? This is what happens when you hire them. She's just another gold digger in uniform. And beneath those, others more dangerous, crueler. The kind whispered behind burning crosses. Charles tried to contain it, released a vague statement. hired legal teams. But the damage was viral. And viruses don't obey PR. That night, Maya stepped outside for air, only to find her car defaced. For red letters, a racial slur, scrawled across the hood. The kind her grandmother once whispered stories about. The kind that left blood in dirt and fear in generations. Her knees buckled. She sat on the driveway, fists clenched in silence. Jacob found her there, didn't speak, just brought her a cloth and water. He cleaned the paint while she stared at the stars. Inside, Charles paced the study, anger in his voice, apologies in his throat. But nothing he said reached her anymore. She was breaking, not from guilt, but exhaustion. Even when she loved, she was punished. Even when she nurtured, she was shamed. She packed that night. 2 bags. Nothing more. She paused at the dresser, her hand hovering over the Bible. The letter. She opened it again. Alma's words, trembling on the edge of history. They'll shame you for what they've always demanded from us. If you found this, you are not alone. Maya sat on the edge of the bed, not crying, just still. Then she did something strange. She unpacked the bags. Slowly, deliberately, clothes back in drawers, shoes beneath the bed. She hung her apron with calm hands. She wasn't staying for Charles or the house. She was staying because her silence would be their comfort, and her voice would be their reckoning. If they turned her into a spectacle, she'd become a mirror. She stood tall, walked to the window, and stared out at the flashing cameras. They wanted a story? She'd give them one. The podium stood just outside the Iron Estate gates, flanked by swaying microphones and blinking red lights. Reporters pressed forward like vultures in designer suits. Their questions crackled, unanswered. Maya watched from the upstairs window. She hadn't wanted this. Spotlight, scandal, storyline. But it had found her anyway. Beside her, Jacob stood quietly. He hadn't said much since the car was defaced. But this morning, when she wavered, he only said, "Let him speak. You've earned that much." So she watched. Charles stepped up to the mic at exactly 10 a.m. No suit, no tie, just a dark blazer and a face stripped of pretense. He looked tired, but focused. He cleared his throat once. "My name is Charles Ellington," he began. "I am the owner of this estate, the father of the child at the center of your headlines, and the employer of Maya Johnson." Cameras clicked like fireworks. Charles held up a photo, not the leaked one. A new one, taken 2 weeks ago. Maya holding the baby, both smiling. Peaceful. Proud. "She is not the scandal," he said. "She is the reason my son is alive." A pause. "I've been silent, complicit, watching the internet chew her alive while I calculated my risk. I let fear make me cowardly. I regret it." The crowd shifted. Charles continued. "Maya Johnson is not just a maid. She is a mother, a woman of unshakable instinct, who stepped in where others, including myself, failed. Her act was one of love, not trespass. But the response she's received reveals something uglier than any scandal: the depths of our conditioned bias." The crowd was dead quiet now. "I've heard what's been said about her. I've read the messages, the slurs, the death threats, and let me be clear, this was not outrage. It was racism." Cameras blinked harder. Some reporters scribbled faster. Charles steadied his voice. "Today, I am pledging $10 million to Black maternal health initiatives across the country. Organizations run by Black women, for Black women. Because Maya's story is not unique. It's just visible. And that's the difference." More gasps, but no interruptions. "I have also withdrawn from 3 of my private equity boards whose leadership failed to denounce the attacks made on her. I will no longer sit in rooms that refuse to acknowledge injustice." Back inside, Maya swallowed hard. She didn't feel vindicated. She felt seen. Jacob touched her arm gently, nodding toward the window. Charles looked up toward the house now, though he couldn't see her through the glare. "There's no way to undo what Maya has endured," he said. "But we can stop pretending that silence is neutral. I am done pretending." He stepped back from the mic. No questions. No rehearsed smile. just a man walking away from the system he once guarded. Inside the nursery, the baby stirred in his crib and began to fuss. Maya walked to him, lifted him gently, held him against her chest, and smiled, because this time the world had to listen. The paper was soft, almost translucent now. Maya sat at her small desk near the window, pen in hand, Alma's letter unfolded beside her. Outside, the last of the news vans were gone. The gates had closed. The world had shifted, but not forgotten. She began to write. Dear Alma, you never knew me, and I only found you because you had the courage to hide your truth where someone might one day find it. That someone was me. Her voice trembled as she read the words aloud, the baby asleep in the cradle behind her. I want you to know your pain was not in vain. Your voice did not disappear. It waited, patient and powerful, beneath the floorboards of a house that once buried women like us under silence. But not anymore. She paused, glancing at the window. In the distance, she could see Charles standing with two contractors, discussing the remodel for the new foundation wing. He'd kept his word. The house wouldn't erase what had happened, it would transform. They tried to reduce me to a scandal. A headline, problem to be managed. But I learned something from you. From your words. Your still burning grief and stubborn hope. I am not just a maid. I am not a body borrowed in the night. I am not shame. I am story. I am legacy. Maya dipped the pen again, her strokes slower now, deliberate. We are building something, Alma. Charles and I, yes, the same man who once stood in silence, is helping create a foundation in your name. The Alma Initiative. It will fund clinics, training, and mentorship for Black women in maternal care. Not out of charity, but justice. The baby stirred softly. She turned her head, watching his tiny hands stretch toward the ceiling as if reaching for light. And I've decided to stay, but not as their help. I'm staying as a mentor, a voice. I will not let another young woman move through these hallways thinking she is alone. You taught me that our dignity was never theirs to give, it was ours to remember. Her eyes burned, but she kept writing. This letter will go back under the floorboard with yours, in case someone else needs to find it someday. In case another heart needs proof that it's not the first to break and still beat. Thank you for leaving your truth behind. I promise to leave mine in the light. Maya, she folded the letter slowly, slipped it into an envelope, and pressed it beside Alma's, beneath the board. No longer buried, just resting, waiting for the next woman to listen. The bell rang from downstairs. A guest had arrived. A woman from Atlanta, a young doula, the first fellow of the Foundation's mentorship program. Maya smiled, stood tall, and headed for the stairs. This time, she wasn't hiding. This time, she was welcoming someone home. The house felt different now. Not in its walls or windows, those still gleamed with their curated luxury, but in the air. Lighter, braver, more human. Maya stepped through the grand double doors, no longer wearing the navy uniform or quiet shoes of service. Instead, she wore soft gray slacks, a cream blouse, and a calmness that had taken months to earn. She held no tray, no broom, no key, just a wrapped book under one arm, a gift for the child she hadn't seen in weeks. The foyer was warm with late spring light. Laughter drifted faintly from the parlor. Jacob met her by the stairs with a nod. He's walking now, he said with a proud grin. Fast. Maya smiled. He always did like to keep us chasing him. As if on cue, small footsteps came pattering across the hall. A giggle, then a blur of soft curls and wobbly legs. The baby, now almost a year old, rounded the corner and ran straight toward her. Maya! Charles called from behind, slightly out of breath. He's gotten away from me again, but the boy didn't stop. He reached her, arms outstretched, eyes wide with pure joy, and then he said it. Mama! The word fell like a prayer. Soft, perfect, undeniable. Time stilled. Charles froze in the doorway. His expression shifted, not from shock, but recognition. A quiet yielding. Maya knelt slowly, wrapping the child in her arms. She didn't cry, though her throat ached. She rested her cheek against his head, her eyes closed. He called her Mama, not because someone taught him, but because his body remembered the rhythm of her heart, the warmth of her chest, the way her arms had once made the world feel safe. Charles stepped forward, voice hushed. He says it to no one else. Maya looked up. Charles's eyes were glassy, his smile soft. I don't know what I expected, he said, but this feels right. Maya nodded once. It's not about what's right. It's about what's real. The baby nestled into her shoulder, calm now. In that moment, the weight of history didn't vanish, but it bent. It softened. It gave way to something the house had never known before, belonging without ownership. Maya stood, still holding the child, and Charles didn't object. He simply opened the parlor door, ushering her inside with a quiet reverence. She walked in not as a maid, not even as a mother, but as something unspoken, undeniable, family. And this time no one turned away.